Hey, welcome back to Pop Nerd, and today we'll be taking a look at realistic node-based space renders. We have a special guest joining us, Sam Krug, who is a Blender VFX artist who makes these awesome node-based realistic space renders, including but not limited to planets, galaxies, and black holes. We'll be doing a quick breakdown of his black hole scene and answering some questions from the community, but first, let's start off with an introduction. So yeah, you can start off by telling everyone a bit about yourself and how you got into working with Blender.
Hello everyone, I'm really happy to be here. I've been super stoked about this collab. But I am a Blender VFX artist. I do space stuff, and I mainly focus on procedurals, and I love volumetrics. And a bit about how I got into working with Blender. I actually used to draw quite a bit. I would draw actually trees, and one time I saw a Blender tutorial on how to make trees, and I got interested in that, so I clicked it. And I have not gone back to drawing on paper. I've been doing Blender ever since.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know that a lot of the subscribers of this channel love space and science fiction, and that you do as well. So I just wanted to ask, like,
Mhm.
what projects have you worked on, and what are your like main inspirations for those?
So most of my projects are actually they're quick experiments, but they never really make it anywhere. They're sort of the precursors to the big projects that I post on my YouTube and my Instagram, our station, of course. But probably the biggest project I've ever worked on was my galaxy system, and that's the goal of that was to try and create fully procedural volumetric galaxies, and I spent literally years on that off and on.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then close second would be black holes, and then the nebula stuff. That's been sort of an iterative process that's taken a long time, but hasn't been a whole lot of work really.
That's
Just sort
amazing.
of quick series of quick experiments.
So yeah, when you are working on these projects, what's like your general creative process when you're working on these scenes?
So it often actually varies quite a bit. It's often I spend a lot of time looking at reference material, and then I start by compiling just a bunch of stuff I have, just like literally pulling node groups from other projects and stuff, trying to quickly hack together a scene. And then once I get something that's sort of resembles what I'm working towards, I break that all down and I try and recreate everything because while using stuff from your other scenes and that especially nodes, mainly nodes, is what I'm talking about right now.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be kind of hard to edit those because oftentimes there's you worked on them a while ago and you can kind of forget how they actually work.
Right.
So I like to try and rebuild them, and that has a few key benefits. As I already explained, you kind of understand what you're using now, but you can also make tailor it to your specific project easier.
So yeah, let's dive into a specific project then. So when you were creating the black hole scene, which is incredible, by the way, yeah, what were like the steps that you took to make that?
So obviously, the first thing would be gathering inspiration and references, and that was, I mean, I think everybody here can guess my main inspiration, which was the Gargantua from Interstellar. That
Mm.
was an absolutely revolutionary piece of CGI, and actually, it was probably one of my favorite moments when I like you saw there's a scene in the movie where the Endurance is going through the clouds and just it's
Hmm.
appearing right above them. It's hard to describe. Yeah,
Yeah, I can throw that up on the screen.
yeah, that was probably my favorite shot in any movie up till that point. It was something I really wanted to recreate, but I really didn't know how to. But then I found there was a guy doing some really crazy stuff. Black Rainbow on Blender Artist. He's the best black hole artist I know of.
Okay, I haven't heard of him. I'll check him out for sure.
Yeah, he's been a huge inspiration. The style of my black holes are actually, some of them are styled after some of his, but it's really hard to recreate the original. So he provided some of his knowledge there, and uh, I definitely use that as a reference.
That's great. So I know that in Interstellar, the movie, they like created their own like rendering engine or something like that. I heard that
Hmm.
like implemented the real like physics of a black hole, and I thought that was super cool. So I know that you did some that I know that you implemented some real physics and mathematics as well. So yeah, how did you go about doing that?
So I wouldn't call it quite real because real is very complex and it's far beyond my understanding.
Okay, that's fair.
But you can definitely I definitely tried to approximate it. So what I'm doing there is I am using refraction, and I used to be using conical refractive sheets,
Hmm.
um, and that was meant to simulate the light basically being marched around the uh, black hole, and that was supposed to you get like a sort of refractive balance every time it would interact with the thing.
Hmm.
That got me most of the way there. That's what most of my black hole renders are using. But I have actually recently drastically changed my methods, and now I'm using a bunch of concentric spheres,
Okay.
and those allow me to do some really interesting stuff. And that actually the original concept for that was invented by another user. But I did expand on it a bit and I figured out how to do some pretty cool stuff relating to spinning black holes with that.
Okay.
So that's actually what I've been using recently.
That sounds amazing. Well, yeah, I know there's a lot of technical stuff involved and while creating these black holes. So, yeah, if anyone wants to check those out, I know that you do have some tutorials. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if that's the new method or the old method, but I have checked them
It's the
out.
new method.
Okay, for sure. That's awesome. But yeah, I'll leave a link to that down in the description if anyone wants to check that out.
Yeah, I have a couple hours of tutorials on them on my YouTube channel. I try to go in depth, but it gets confusing because it's node work and I'm not the best teacher.
Right, yeah, nodes can get pretty complex. Moving on from the black hole scene, I know that you like science and science fiction, which makes me
Mm-hmm.
curious. Obviously, you've mentioned Interstellar, but specifically, like, what other types of art do you like to consume?
Well, I like a lot of, I just in general, I like movies and a bit away. I'm going to stray away from the visual territory here. I actually love a lot of music as well.
Okay.
Music is an excellent way to just, well, I mean, most of you probably listen to music. You
Yeah,
know
I
what
love music.
appeals, what's appealing about music. Um, I do like a lot of rock stuff though. Yeah, classic rock.
Rock stuff, okay. Any specific artists?
Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin, okay, okay. One of my good
Yeah.
friends is a huge Led Zeppelin fan. He always tries to get me into him. Are there any other skills that you would like to develop in regards to Blender and art, and even like maybe physics in general?
Yeah, so my preferred career path, I want to become a physicist.
That's that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can pursue that track in college. But relating to art, I think the most important thing that I want to improve is I want to improve my composition skills. I can do a lot of technical stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty decent. I'm gonna assume that I can say this. I'm pretty decent at um, finding cool ways to do stuff that might be unintuitive.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
For instance, like my planet implosion one, I like that one. I thought that was quite a novel approach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still need to work on composition. I need to work on making sure my renders, instead of just being technically impressive, are also aesthetically pleasing as much as possible. I try to do that as much, but it's sort of a hit or miss thing with me.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it is for a lot of beginner artists. It is easy to get lost in all the technical stuff and forget about the
mhm.
composition. Your work's great though. I've been looking at your most recent planet thing on ArtStation, the planet render,
Hmm.
and yeah, I saw like the before and after the composition, and it looks great. I think you're definitely getting really good at that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've definitely improved. Still not where I hope to be though.
Yeah, well, everyone's definitely got room to improve.
Yeah.
But yeah, where do you hope to take these skills in the future? Obviously, I know you just said you'd like to be a physicist. You want to study physics in
Hmm.
college, but like in general with your art and everything, is there like a specific direction you want to take this in?
So I think this is a very nice hobby. It's definitely my top hobby, and I have a lot of competing hobbies. Um, but I don't think I'd really want to make a career out of it. There's a lot of things that happen when you shift a hobby to your career, especially with VFX, and I'm not really sure if I want to go through that. I want to keep this as a nice hobby. That being said, I do think that this might earn me a couple bucks if I can keep going, and that might be nice.
Definitely, yeah. Especially because what you like create in art is so similar to the types of things you're interested in regards to physics and
Hmm.
science. I think that's you can like probably find a way to like mix those two in some sort.
Yeah, if I can, basically, I want to keep doing this on my own terms, but if that can take me somewhere, I'm definitely not gonna hold myself back.
Right, yeah. Fun fact, I actually used to want to be an astrophysicist for the longest time, and then I took a physics class in high school, and I was like, oh, this is not for me.
Ironically, it was the opposite. I wanted to be a mathematician, but physics, actually specifically computational physics, really appeals to me.
Oh, damn, okay. That's awesome. Yeah, let's answer some questions that we got from Instagram and YouTube. So yeah, do you have like a certain approach when dealing with bigger Blender projects? Because I know that you use like particle systems and volumetrics, stuff
Hmm.
that really needs like a powerful PC.
So what I generally like to do is I find a lot of stuff can be like as has been said like a million times so far, I do a lot of procedurals. So I try to avoid particle systems when I can. Like if, for instance, I'm making a star field, I'm going to be using a volumetric texture. It's probably going to be a Voronoi with a bit of with a color ramp and some other jazz. So yeah, particle systems annoy me sometimes, but I mean they have their uses. Volumetrics, I've kind of just accepted that I use volumetrics and it's not going to get much faster. But what I try to do is, and for some of my black holes, actually, instead of using volumetric scattering, which is the primary thing that people complain about when they're talking about speed of volumetrics,
Mm-hmm.
emission and absorption calculations are really fast
Oh,
and they aren't
okay.
noisy. So if I can use emission and absorption, and I've actually been pushing a little bit for this is sort of a side tangent, but I think it's still useful. There's a thing that some rendering engines have called a volumetric light cache,
Mm-hmm.
which basically it computes the light at each point at like in a lattice on a volume, and basically you can do animations with it quickly because it's like accessing a VDB almost, but for lighting. And it reduces scattering computations into essentially emission and absorption computations, which is really handy.
Oh, okay.
I think V-Ray has it. Um, Not really sure.
For sure. I'll have to check that out. I didn't even know that was a thing. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's apparently quite a time saver. I've talked to some people about it. I don't know all that much about it, but I think it wouldn't hurt for Blender to have that. But yeah.
Yeah, that does sound amazing. I've been getting into volumetrics a lot too recently, and in my most
Hmm.
recent scene I used a bunch of just like principled volume everywhere, and it took forever to
Yeah.
render, but I like the result. But yeah, I was just wondering if there's stuff I could do to
Yeah.
make that better.
I find you can often get 99% there with emission and absorption. Most of my nebulas are nebulae, yeah, are emission and absorption based. For instance, the last one I posted on my Instagram, like literally earlier today. Might want to pull that one up.
Oh, right. Yeah. Pull that up for sure.
Yeah. So that one takes the one I was playing on screen right now. That one took about 1 minute per frame,
Oh, okay.
and it you can see it looks like probably wouldn't get you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between scattering and emission and absorption. Yet the render times do show a difference, right?
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't even.
1 minute per frame. I'm looking at the animation right now. That's incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail that can be highlighted with those by those.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
awesome. So yeah, the next question that we had from the community was, what piece of advice would you give to a beginner who wants to learn how to make these types of space renders?
so first of all, don't get too ambitious. Planets are a good start for space renders. But if you want to do some sort of nebulae, I can give you a few pieces of advice because I think that that's where a lot of people want to enter the space
Mm-hmm.
sort of realm. I know that a few friends have wanted to do it because planets and nebulae, that's like the two main ones as far as I know. So for planets, I mean, I've got tutorials on planets that's probably better than I can give. That's probably better advice than I can give you on a whim. Or
Mm-hmm.
there are like a million other good tutorials, right?
Right.
Um, I look at those.
Okay, for sure.
But if you want to do nebulae, and I know there's some good nebulae tutorials, but the best, I follow those tutorials, but also experiment by using those techniques with Musgrave textures. Musgrave textures are really interesting, and they can get you a long ways.
Yes, I use Musgrave textures for so many things.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
There's just so many different looks you can get with Musgrave textures. Really check them out. They aren't used nearly as much as they should be. I use them in almost every project.
for sure. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Also, space lighting isn't really a big issue, so don't worry too much about that. Also, if you want your renders to look really good, one thing that I think I am good at, one thing that I think you should really pay attention to is scale. You need to be able to capture some scale because that's probably the main. That's what I find the coolest about space, the scale of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can show that in many different ways. You can show relative size just on the screen. Like for instance, Interstellar does. I'm going to mention Interstellar again. It does an incredible job of this. There's a shot where the ship's passing by Saturn, and it's wonderful negative space. It's amazing,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
just a few pixels, and yet it shows all the difference. Um, yeah, I'd much rather see a shot like that than a close-up spaceship going through the rings or something.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the one around the black hole. That one will. That's an exception.
Yeah, that shot is amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's one way to show scale. Then there's just relative motion. So, for instance, if you have something in the background that isn't really moving at all, and yet you have something in the foreground that's whizzing by the frame, and if you can tell it's like sizable, both are sizable, that's one way to show scale. You
Mm-hmm.
can combine both. There are many ways. I'm definitely not educated enough to really say a whole lot about it, but that's just one thing I've sort of found out about it. That's what differentiates my what I consider my good renders from my bad renders.
Right. Okay. I've also noticed that, like, along with those methods, that like using like the right focal length
Hmm.
can really like make a big difference as well. I know Gareth Edwards, the director of Rogue One
Yeah.
and Godzilla, like he really uses that to his benefit. I'll throw a couple images up of those as well. And yeah,
Hmm.
just using like a different focal length, like a higher focal length, can make like a huge difference as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that some people are really able to exploit that really well. I'm honestly I haven't really done a whole lot with focal length. I just keep it at the default often. Don't take my advice for this because it's bad advice.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, you still managed to make your renders look amazing. So,
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. But it's probably something I need to research a bit more to really know what I'm doing there.
yeah,
Because often I only change focal length when I want to keep when I'm too lazy to move the camera and I want to put stuff in frame.
yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, that's my main use of the focal length as well.
Yeah, or to keep stuff out of the frame.
Well, yeah. So before we do end this, where can people find you and your work on social media?
Yeah, so I think Pop Nerd will put a few things in the description, but I have an Instagram account, which is probably my main account. Maybe YouTube's now my main, I guess. I have an Instagram, I have YouTube, and I have a relatively small, and by small I mean I'm rather inactive on an art station.
Yeah, I'll leave all those links in the description as well. And if anyone wants to like specifically contact you, do you have like an email or should they just message you on Instagram?
Message me on Instagram. Oh, and I also have a Discord server, which has been my pet project. That's probably my main source of interaction. So if you want to ever ask me anything, um, request tutorials, do anything, just uh, hop on my Discord server. I'm on there all the time.
All right, for sure. Yeah, I'll leave a link to
Yeah,
that as well. Well, it's been great talking to you. Learn a
yeah,
lot about space renders, and yeah, if anyone wants to like really get into this and learn how to do all the nodes and volumetrics and all that, definitely check out
hmm
his tutorials. Um, I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. And yeah, I'd love to have
yeah.
you on again.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my rambling, people. I'm not always the best person for advice, but really, it's really nice to have sort of an outlet to share some stuff that I've learned. Thank you again for having me, Pop Nerd.
Of course, you have some incredible work, and I'm glad we got to take a look behind the scenes.
Same here. Have a good one, guys.